Okay, first we have Mark. So first thing would say is I think you could probably come around a little bit closer to a shot, sort of maybe almost from the point of view of that screen, a little closer in. You don't always have to be from the side. And then, yeah, the feet seem to kind of lift and float off the ground, so you're going to want to make those thick. And his chest breathing is a bit too fast. I would try to slow that down. Even heavy breathing wouldn't be quite that fast. Yeah, especially there. Much too fast. Yeah, but it has improved some. I think there's still some kind of popping, like there was some of that crazy action on the hand just there. You probably want to delete some keyframes off of that section. Yeah, right there is where his hand kind of jerks around. And yeah, and maybe a couple more holds at the end because those things go much too fast. Like I would, you know, set it down, hold for a moment, put his head like that, hold for a moment. You know, I don't know what that pose is supposed to be exactly, but and you do hold at the end. But again, these chest movements are much too fast. Okay, but definitely has improved over the last version. Next, we've got chord. So yeah, I think it's in a sense it's good to be slow because it's someone who's just woken up. But I think that right now it looks sort of like slow motion, and if you want to give it that slow, just woken up feeling, what I would recommend is that you know that first part's quick, like oh he pops awake, he's surprised, but then from here, from this pose to this pose, I would speed that up, but you could sort of pause, and then do this a little faster and then pause. And when you're shaking the head, like try to do something like take a breath, like kind of like arch the back slightly and then curl it slightly, like like breathe in and out. Something to just because right now it's never good when you only have one little part of the body moving. Just the neck. There should always be a little bit more movement. Um, yeah, this has definitely come a ways from where you were before, and look out for intersections that are obvious that show up. Where was it? I think it was right here. The hand goes through the leg, so just get that to swing around. Um, and I think yeah, the way the hand slides along here, I just think it'll help if it's faster. So if you move faster, pause, and then move faster to the next pose and pause, it'll look better. But yeah, it's come a long way and it's looking good. Next, we've got Erica. So, yeah, I think the first thing I say is really the camera animation is much too much movement. I would just delete any animation off the camera and just do a shot like we see now, and yeah, just remove the camera animation. But the facial expression animation is good, but remove any camera animation and just focus on getting the body involved. Um, so that's a good, you know, facial animation, but it's really there's very little character animation in this at all right now. There's not I don't see a single, unless it happened when the camera was spinning around. I didn't see any character movement at all. Um, just a little bit of facial change. So yeah, I think you need to kind of get the camera animation off, take a step back, and get some poses in there. Move your character around. Next, we've got Mario. So yeah, there's a lot of good work in here. I can see you put a lot of time into creating a lot of different poses. I think it's really hard to see with all the curves turned on and at this low resolution that you've play blasted it. So hiding all that stuff and play blasting in a higher resolution and make this a lot easier to see. So yeah, before you play blast, just go show none, show polygons, and if you have nerve surfaces too, and then it'll look much more clean. I think yeah, there's a lot of good stuff going on in here. There's a few moments where it's a little bit too snappy, like right here. There. Let's watch that again. That movement was very, very, very fast. So I might slow that one down a little bit. In general, I like sort of fast movements and then moving holds, so that's good. But some of those cases were a little too quick. And then the other thing to clean up in here is getting the feet to stick. I'll show one example. I think I showed this last week too, but how to fix these feet. But let me just let's look at this one right here. So first, let's go to this frame, and whoops. Okay, let's first get the foot placed correctly to begin with, because it's not on the ground as it is. So let's so that's actually this might be part of your issue, is that it could be that your root is too high. So let's make sure that's not overextending for that pose. And yeah, he's maybe going a bit high here as well. That's not the whole problem, but that is part of your problem. Is that the root's too high for the foot to even reach the floor. But presuming that's the right height now that there's hopefully enough room for this, let's make sure that the foot is exactly touching the floor on this contact frame. Get rid of this rotation. Okay, so I have auto key on, so that should fix that. And then I'll middle mouse click on this next frame where it should be holding to, and then hit S so that it should hold between those two frames. So see that? It hits the ground and hold. Let's look at that in the perspective view. Okay, doesn't that look better when the foot sticks properly? Alright, so the main things are, go to the contact frame where it hits the ground, make sure it's properly touching the ground, make sure the root is low enough that it can reach the ground, set a keyframe on that frame, then go forward to the end of where the foot should be sticking, but middle mouse click on that frame so you update the time without updating the animation, then hit S to set keyframe, and so go through your various foot contacts and clean that up. That'll help this out a lot. And then look for those just little things that were too fast. That one, when it moves his hand back down, like a lot of those are just a little too fast, I think. I mean, that one's okay. I don't mind that one. And that one's alright. It's just there's a few in there that just are real snappy. And then, as I've mentioned before, and other people have mentioned a few times too now, is to, animate the camera so that we have. Do you have an additional camera in here? You have camera one, but that seems to be off in space somewhere. Let's go back to perspective view. So what you might do is let's select this camera and set a keyframe and go to say like here, and then maybe do something like this. It's always good to have your resolution gate on when you're um, adjusting the camera. And let's do overscan just to make sure we see. Oh, 640 by 480. I think you're probably going to want to render at at least 720 there. So you got the rectangle. So that, or maybe like this, something like that. I might go for something like that. Okay, that gets a little too close. Let's go back here. Okay. And anyway, so we don't want this camera animation here, so what we'll do is double click on the timeline, right mouse click, tangents, stepped, with that camera still selected. So you start out in your wide kind of establishing shot, and he walks up and you cut to the close-up so we can really see the acting. And then at some point, when he walks back, you can cut back to your original shot. That might be a little tighter than I would go. Yeah, I think you're still okay here. You could cut back to wide there, but maybe like, there. You always cut on the action. So 520, so I'm going to go back to this original one, middle mouse click on 520, and set a keyframe there. And then just make sure these are stepped tangents again. So you see this animation here, and then he turns and we cut and he goes back maybe a little bit earlier, because you always want to cut on the action. That's better. Yeah, something like that. You don't have to do a ton of camera stuff, but just enough to kind of focus our attention on what we should be looking at. But in general, I would say there's a lot of good work in here. You've clearly put a lot of time into your poses and working on the animation. So I think clean up those feeds, get the cameras done, and you're a lot of the way there. Maybe you got more facial stuff going on as well. Next, we've got Yuri. So this is coming along really well. It's you fixed a lot of those problems we saw before. I think yeah, there's a lot of work in here clearly. I think that I would still call this kind of at the blocking stage, because you really want to get into the details of this stuff and break up these poses. So you're really at pose to pose right now, where everything hits at the same time, and you want to have different parts of the body land at different times. Also, I think you could put more time into adjusting the timing. Um, so, for example, like there he lands, I mean, I guess you got a couple little pauses in there. That looked really fast. So you might want to slow that down a touch, that jump up there. And also he sort of seems to pause in the air here, which we don't want him to pause in the middle of the air, at least in the forward momentum. Um, and yeah, everything has this kind of consistent, even very fast pace, and you want to kind of break that up a little bit. So yeah, especially this part, everything's going a little too fast. So what I would do is, you know, when you cut to this shot, get his hand on there first, pause, then slide it off, pause, then grab it, pause, then lift it up and set it down, pause, then type in the numbers. And the pauses don't have to be that long, but it's just everything's too fast. And I think some of those movements themselves are a bit too fast. Like, you know, this looks like a heavy thing, so make slow it down so it looks a little harder to get out. And yeah, after he types in the code, again, just a little pause. And then again, yeah, I think the curl there seems to sort of. I think you want a more fluid movement, so I think you don't want that to pause. Yeah, it's a good ending. So it's a really good piece. I think there's some more timing you could do fixes first, and then I think you could go in and get a lot more little details into the animation and the poses and kind of breaking it up so it doesn't look so pose to pose. But again, very ambitious piece, and I think that what you really have here is a foundation for something that could be a great piece on your reel, but it's not kind of done yet at that level. But I don't even really expect people to get stuff for the reel out of this class. I consider it this sort of this bigger beginner class to just kind of learn with. But this one really, by saying that it's a foundation for that, I'm saying you've kind of gone above and beyond and taken this to the next level. So that's very good. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it would be worth for you to keep going with this piece. It's good. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. You had a couple questions in there though. So I'm still having a problem using more than one camera in a playblast. Just playblast the two different camera ranges and then edit it together afterwards. I mean, let me know if you don't understand that, but you playblast one, make sure you know where that file is saved. You playblast the other, make sure you know where that file is saved, and then put them together in either After Effects or Premiere, edit them into one sequence. So, um, that's anyways, if you still want more explicit help with that, just let me know. I'm happy to do that. But I think there's really no trick to it. And then, so having the vents cast a shadow on the floor. Um, so I'll just create like a simple scene for this and show you a couple approaches. So I have a real simple scene here with a surface with some like a vent and a ground floor. And behind the vent, I've got a spotlight, and on that spotlight, I've turned on shadows, and you can see when I render it, and I get those shadows on the floor from the vents. So that's kind of one simple approach that you can do. Yeah, that's probably how I would do it. I'm not sure that's exactly what you wanted, but that's a pretty simple approach. Now we've got Todd. Whoops. Let's try something else. Alright, yeah, this is looking good. What I might do is right there, I might cut to another shot. You've got a lot of sort of, empty space here on the screen. So there, or even like right here, I might cut to kind of a closer shot, kind of come around to the front a little bit so we can see his face better. Maybe kind of a low angle looking up at him with the vase in the foreground, something like that. And then I think to go along with that, yeah, just some facial expressions. What is his reaction? Does he smile? He looks sort of frowny right now? So does this make him happy putting the flower in? Is it the emotional thing? Who knows? But come up with some sort of facial reaction, a couple blinks in there, maybe something happening with the eyebrows. I think that would really bring it to life. But I mean, the work is really good and clean. There isn't any sort of really, obvious problems with this. It's good, clean work. Maybe the pacing could be broken up because it feels a little bit too like a consistent pace, and maybe like for example, I might pause right here a little bit. Maybe he takes a little bit longer to line that up, just so I also might spend a little bit more time on the hand pose for the holding that. It seems like he's pinching it here pretty nicely, but then his pinch release is already there, and I would still have him pinch it there, with his forefinger and his thumb, and then release, somewhere around there. But yeah, that might be good. So you might be able to fit another pause in there or something, and then, like I said, bring the camera around, add some facial expressions. You could really take this to the next level. But it's good, clean work as it is. Next, we've got James. This has definitely come a long way. I think those pauses are really helping. One thing that looks a little weird is so like here, it's better where I think maybe this motion is too fast, but you've got that the head moving back and forth. I might slow that down. But the point is that the neck is moving separately from the body. But what makes some of this later part awkward is that the neck and body move all together, and that's part of where this sort of stiffness and robotic look is coming from. Where I mean, typically, if what he's doing is looking around, um, you would tend to do that, with your neck more than with your whole spine. But either way, it's just it. Yeah, it's too much. Well, you just need to animate the neck. So I would say you might reduce the amount the body's moving and animate the neck, and and also I would say like if he is going to even kind of twist his spine and move around, I would probably counter animate the hand because that's another thing that looks weird is the way the hand is kind of swinging around with the head. And what you might do is break it up too. Like he might move his torch in one direction to light that area essentially, and then look that direction with his neck, and then maybe turn his body, to kind of break those things up into three sections. A little bit more sort of bending to the spine. It twists, but it doesn't often bend. So like here, you could have him maybe bend down more, like kind of curl down with his spine as he ducks under this to maybe overcompensate a little bit for that. Yeah, I mean, all this said, it's been coming along nicely. It's definitely improved. So good work. We've got Ebrin. Um, all right. Well, I can see there's some progress on this. I'm not exactly clear what's happening. So is he like stopping to sort of yell or laugh here? I'm not really sure what the action is with that leaning back. I might pause there for a moment when he's leaning back. Um, the walking just looks kind of awkward. I think partly because, so for example, the stride is very short. Like he's taking these very short steps. Like he barely has his foot in front of his body before he starts moving forward. So you might want to lower the torso a little bit and then have a bigger stride there for that first step. And then the extreme unevenness and timing where that speed looks okay, but suddenly there's that next step which is like very, very fast. So I would kind of, that second step I would slow down a little bit. And I can't really tell what he's trying to do. Is he trying to climb over the rock or um, it's not that obvious. So yeah, I think it's made some progress, but it's a little unclear what you're going for. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that, and then yeah, fix some of those timing issues. But yeah, I can definitely see you've put more time into this, uh, and there has been improvement. Next we have Joseph. So the assignment was to turn in like a video, not just a Maya file, and so it's hard to know what you have planned for the camera. If this is the camera angle, or if you have something else in mind, there's a lot of cameras in here, so you might want to delete out some of those extra cameras. But let's take a look at the animation. So yeah, this is improved from last week. Um, I think you're going to want to look at the foot contact a little bit. I think I went over that last time, but see how, for example, this foot is passing through the ground here. So kind of just pay attention to those and get those to stick better so they're not, it looks sort of like it's sinking and moving throughout that. Um, and then maybe just a little bit more animation on the arms just so they're not quite so totally frozen. I mean, I understand that the idea is to have them stay in that position, but just at least a little bit of movement on the shoulders and elbows to kind of loosen them up. And you might want to sort of relax your hand poses a bit. Could be as simple as just doing a little bit on the. Whoops, don't have that selected. Even just a little sort of touch like that. Where it doesn't look, perfectly straight like you had it before. Um, just you can get just a little bit, just to kind of relax it a touch, or you could spend a little bit more time like really adjusting each finger and posing it. Um, and yeah, get work on those foot contacts and look at the balance a little bit too. So a lot of this is looking balanced, but I would watch out for something like this because this is looking really unbalanced here, like he would sort of fall backward. Um, so for something like that, I might have his torso a little further forward on a pose like this. Maybe get rid of this one. So yeah, and then getting a little bit, maybe a little bit of more neck in there, a little bit more spine. Another thing, so like when he's turning, you never seem to really rotate the spine. So what you might want to do is, for example, you've got this thing here. I'm gonna do a keyframe there, and then just gonna delete this one. But maybe he rotates his spine before he turns, the rest of his body. And then you can, correct back for that a little bit afterwards if you want. That looks a little funny because this foot's behind. The point is, it's to get in there and play with rotating the spine, do some neck, some shoulders, elbows. Like right now, a lot of the body is sort of frozen, so get more of those body parts moving, and get the feet contact working. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good piece. And think about the camera a little bit more, where you want that to be that best shows the action. Maybe do a cut or two. I think you could start with a wide shot and cut into a closer shot. But yeah, good progress. Next, we've got Joseph. All right, this has definitely made some progress. The first thing I'd say is the camera angle is just it's sort of an odd choice to be kind of that far above the character. Maybe it's because you want to show the inside of the ice cream tub. I'm not sure, but you'd more often be typically like at around eye level for this shot or lower. Um, and then yeah, I think the animation has improved. I think that there's still room to add a couple pauses in there. Again, it's like when that ice cream scoop first hits the ice cream, it should sort of stop on the ice cream, like it's hitting a surface. Like kind of landing there, and then kind of a slow press, kind of slow it down where he's pressing and scooping something out, and then you can kind of more quickly move to drop the scoop in the cup. Because if you've ever scooped ice cream, it actually can be a very strenuous and difficult thing to do. But it doesn't even have to be that strenuous. But it's certainly, while the scoop is in contact with the ice cream and scooping it up, it should be a lot slower than when it's moving through the air. And then again here, that might be a good opportunity to have a little bit of pause when he sort of, it looks like he's wiping his brow. If he is wiping his brow, make sure it actually makes contact with the brow, because right now it looks like there's a kind of a big gap there. Um, and then the rest of it, there's some good poses going on. It just feels a little bit like slow motion. Like it feels like he's waving, but like almost sort of slow motion. So I would sort of speed that up and make sure you kind of get the wrist involved as well, not just the arm. And those are some things that could help this. But it's clear you put a lot of time into this, and there's definitely some good stuff going on. And is he, if he's ringing the bell, uh, if that is what's going on, it's not obvious. I would go for kind of a really kind of quick sort of wrist flick back and forth to ring the bell, if that's what he's doing. Because right now it's not obvious if or when he's ringing the bell. Assuming, I think that is a bell in his hand, right? Um, and or even why maybe he's holding the bell while he's scooping ice cream. Like maybe you'd want to plant one hand on the table to give him some sort of leverage while he's doing the ice cream, then pick up the bell and ring it at a different point. It might make a little more sense. Um, anyways, still, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. Okay, we've got Rick there. Okay, this seems to have come a long way. I like starting out on this angle, but I might cut into a closer shot, maybe when the tree starts to fall or something, so we can see that a bit better. Um, the first couple steps look all right. I think the thing to do is, um, when you're turning, first look with your head, then step with your foot, and you kind of never even really bring the foot all the way around. I would make sure the foot is rotated more around and kind of plan it a little further to kind of anticipate the turn. So look where you want to go, then set your foot there, and then have the rest of the body follow after. And then he seems to kind of maybe sort of slide forward a bit here. Like the feet aren't planted, so get those feet planted and sticking to the ground. But I like the fall at the end, the kind of fall from shock. That's good. And also get some shoulders and hips rotation in there, some spine. Um, yeah, so those are some areas for improvement. I think it's coming along well. I just think there's a handful of things you could do to improve it, and getting the feet planted and getting the spine rotation are a big part of that. Okay, next we have Josh. So yeah, this is coming along well. It's a very nice looking character and scene. I think that you've got some of this where the back is tilting back. I think it'd be good to have it pause, maybe even just for a moment when it's all the way back before you come down. You could exaggerate the twist in the spine even more. Um, and I think that if when you came down with a hammer, you kind of held it down for a moment and didn't come back up right away, I feel like it would feel like it has more weight. Um, so like come down, and I don't know. It looks like you're sort of doing a bounce there, like when it hits. And I would go, if that's what that is, it's sort of like bouncing off the metal. I would go a little more subtle with that and kind of sort of even if it does bounce, sort of keep it down for a moment before you lift it back up again. I think the hammer will have more weight and get a little bit more wrist going in it, where um, it looks like there's sort of very little wrist animation there. So not that you need a ton, but I think kind of, especially at the end, you could kind of add to the speed there if you flick the wrist a little bit. And I think the rest of this stuff is interesting. I just don't know exactly what that middle part is, what the story point is there. Where he starts sort of gesturing here when he looks over to the side. It looks like maybe somebody's come there and he's gesturing to them or gesturing to other people. I'm not sure what that means. It looks interesting. I think you could go further with moving the root, especially for that stuff as well, like, from side to side. Looks like you've got it moving for some of these, but like for this gesturing part, like it looks a little frozen. I mean, it's rotating a bit, but you could kind of shift the weight to one leg and shift it to the other, especially when you do that kind of broad gesture with the hammer. But yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff going on here. It's a nice piece. Um, yeah, it's working out well. So next we've got Christian. Um, so yeah, first thing I'd say is just it's hard to see what's going on with A, the low resolution, and B, uh, the all the curves on top of it. So as I showed in previous ones, you're going to want to hide those before you play blast. And however you had your play blast set up, I mean, it says 960 by 540 right here, but I mean, what you want to do when you're play blasting, by the way, is if you, like, let's say, I know this is a different file, but um, if I've got resolution gate on, like you did, it's going to show that in the play blast. So the thing to do is, that's good for setting up the camera, but when you're ready to play blast, do no gate, and then in your play blast options, you're going to want to uh, use from render settings here, and then it'll play blast, the size of the render settings. So that's the way to deal with that, and you'll get the right size. But yeah, it's just back to the character animation. It's right now it's very stiff. It doesn't look like you've got the elbows or wrists going much. You could do it more with the hand pose, more with the neck, the spine, shoulders, hips. So it's just looking very stiff, because it looks like you mostly only have a little bit on the shoulders, the feet, and a little bit on the root, and that's about it. And you really need to get the rest of the body involved in those steps. The root moving up and down, the spine, the shoulders and hips twisting a little bit, the hands posed a little better, the wrists moving, all that kind of stuff, getting it going. And that camera whipping around at the end, I would, rather than do that strange kind of whipping around, I would just do a straight cut, and don't have animated cameras in the sense that they're kind of flying around the corner like that. So yeah, I think you could keep working on the walk and make it better, and it'd be nice to see a cleaner play blast of this as well. So next is Lupita. All right, so you've got a couple of decent poses in there, but it looks like you're having a lot of sort of timing problems and issues with some of the poses. So, for example, that's an okay pose, that's an okay pose, but why it's sort of jerking around in between, I think maybe you have a lot of extra keyframes you gotta get rid of. Also, he's taking these tiny steps, so you know, give him a longer stride here. Have this foot forward four, move the root halfway between the legs and get that forward more, and then make sure the foot sticks. I demonstrated how to do that earlier in a different one. Well, if you could watch the whole video. But then they kind of, one moves forward and the other moves forward. We want to make sure one foot is planted while the other is moving, and then they switch. So while one foot is moving, the other foot is planted. While the left foot is moving, the right foot is planted. While the left foot is moving, the right foot is planted. But right now they're both sort of moving at the same time, and that's looking, and in a very kind of quick and staccato manner. Um, so yeah, I think that you need to kind of go back through and clean up. Like, I think go to where you have a few good poses, keep those, but then delete the keyframes in between, and then get some like better, cleaner poses in between there, and kind of build from there. Because right now, um, yeah, it's not working very well. Just taking a quick look at this, what's making this difficult here is there's loads of keyframes. So um, that's going to make this a lot harder. So what I might do is like go to the next point. There's a good pose here. Let's say there. Make sure everything's keyframed. I just hit S, and then I'll just delete everything out in between. So now and let's look like the next time there's a decent pose. That's sort of okay, except for, and then kind of delete everything in between, but then I think we'd have to fix this next pose. So this foot is probably going to stay planted, so I'll have that foot selected. I'll jump forward to the next keyframe. Sorry, I should middle mouse click on the next keyframe and hit S. So now that's going to stick. See how that sticks while the other one moves? And then I'll get this one to go a little further. And maybe pull the body forward more, down some. Okay. You can have the foot lift up in the middle of that. So that's kind of how I would start cleaning this up. So maybe go to here. Let's make sure I've got everything selected again. I've just maybe there 32 to I don't know 43 maybe. So get rid of all these, and then we'll sort of clean this up. I think what we want to do is have this foot stick now. So middle mouse click there and set a keyframe so that foot sticks, and then now this foot, the other foot moves forward. Right, so we got that, and then I just keep going, continuing cleaning up. Find out where you've got a decent pose, maybe here, and then delete everything in between. So yeah, I mean it's starting to, and so it's starting to come back together. So then once you got your timeline all cleaned up, then you can start adding the additional detail.